Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome. Monday night, July the 17th, 2023, live from SEC Media Days, or at least Nashville, Tennessee, the site of SEC. What a day. We got a lot to get into, a lot to discuss. Central. So, here is how the show is going to shake out tonight. My guy, Eric Reese. What's going on, my friend? Eric, I'll have the Furman information for our graphic over to you within the next hour, by the way. What a day it has been. The show tonight will go as follows. Hour number 2, we will have J.C. Shurburtt coming on the show, 10:15 Central Time, 11:15 Eastern. In this first hour, I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so detailing day one at SEC Media Days. You guys saw a lot of it, obviously, on social media, but I want to share with you guys exactly how it went down, what stood out, of course, from the coaches, the players, but also just yours truly. And again, guys, what a day it was for many different reasons. I want to get into that, obviously. Hour number 3, the Q&A Power Hour. And if we're having any technical issues, you guys let me know. The Wi-Fi in this Airbnb is a little bit shoddy at times, I will admit. Either way, especially if we're having audio issues, obviously I want to make sure this is good for the podcast. So y'all please let me know if audio is giving you any trouble. The Q&A Power Hour. If the questions are rolling and the questions are there, we will rock with questions until midnight Central. I'm expecting, and it's okay, that we will not have as many questions as normal. I get it, guys. It is late right now, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But as I told you all, I wanted to make sure, of course, we were getting the content in. The content must be made. The show rolls on, no matter how late it might take place. So, with that being said, we are live. We are rocking. Of course, the podcast will be out tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for you all, as it was today as well. Hope you guys enjoyed that. But for sure, we'll have J.C. Shurburtt on hour number 2 and all of our content in hour number 1. Again, let me see if, because I see you guys talking about the Wi-Fi. Let me disconnect from the Wi-Fi from my iPhone. Maybe that'll help it out a little bit. Hopefully that clears it up somewhat, because on my end it looks clear, but I'm sure, I saw this on the video yesterday. I know it wasn't quite as good as what we normally have. I see Chase Floyd, Mayhem, Eric Reese, GA, KFC, Babes and Waves. Again, guys, appreciate you all burning the midnight oil with us. Jam-packed show. Lots to get into, but like I mentioned, in regards to how much of a Q&A Power Hour will we have, it'll really just depend on how many questions we have from you guys. And again, I'm not expecting a ton. I'm not expecting a lot of callers, if any, because it is very late. I'm sure it's past some of your bedtimes. With that being said, though, like I mentioned, a jam-packed show. What a day. Let's start there. Day 1 at SEC Media Days, officially in the books. And I was asked today by Mark Ryan in our radio spot, what was the vibe? What was the energy? And did it meet my expectations and what I had expecting, or I was hoping the day would hold? I am happy to say that it met and exceeded all the expectations that I had for it. I feel like I'm still on a high right now, guys. The adrenaline rush of the day that was at SEC Media Days, it was incredible, truly. And maybe this is something if I go to 10, 15, 20 of them, whatever, it'll get old at some point, maybe before then. But for me, it being my first one, just incredible. It's somewhat hard for me to find the words of just how much fun it was. I'll start with the coaches. And of course, you guys all saw the clip. Yours truly got to ask Brian Kelly a question. And this mug right here was on SEC Network Plus, or excuse me, SEC Network. God, I can't even get the channels right. Was on SEC Network. Asking Brian Kelly about Logan Diggs, the running back position, picking him up in the transfer portal. And I got to be honest with you. I've done countless amounts of podcasts, interviews. I've had some of the biggest guests you could ever think of on these airwaves. And, I always get excited. I don't really get nervous. I get very, very excited, right? And I don't have a fear, believe it or not, of public speaking, especially when I'm talking about sports or, my business or things of that nature. But being in that big room today, and when I knew that I was going to get to ask a question, and I knew that I was up next, I had to do some breathing exercises to just, hey, slow it down, calm it down, control the breathing, stay within yourself. And I'll be honest, guys, when I got called on and I went back and I watched the clip, obviously, I was impressed how calm I sounded because it felt like my heart was beating 1,000 miles an hour. And it almost felt like in that moment that I blacked out, like asking the question. Like the words were coming out, everything was flowing. I was present moment, but it was also like a surreal moment at the same time. And that might sound kind of weird or kind of funny. And maybe to some of you out there that sounds silly, but I guess what hit me in that moment was I just sort of had a flashback of everything that's happened over the last 6 years in the history of TSUS, the business, and even before that. The story I told back in 2014, sitting on my couch, watching SEC Media Days, thinking to myself, man, how cool would it be to be there at that event? I thought back to that, everything that's happened in my life and in the business and, everything in between that's gotten us to this point. And I mean, it was an incredible feeling, incredible moment. And, I think it was a pretty decent question. And Coach Kelly answered the question, and that was awesome. I mean, it was cool. It was awesome. And it was really cool with the Big Cock Club Discord, others on Twitter. I was getting texts, just saw you on TV, whatever, which was really neat. I did have a question for Eli Drinkwitz. Unfortunately, they did not get to me. I had a great question about the offensive line. He mentioned that. Was going to ask him about the returning experience. Mizzou with 136 starts coming back, by the way. But asking Brian Kelly a question, that was really cool. The plan is, guys, to ask more questions to different coaches throughout the week. And, of course, the end of the week, we'll have Shane Beamer. Yes, the plan is to ask Coach Beamer a question. In regards to what the coaches actually had to say, I thought Brian Kelly sounded very confident. It was a much different vibe in the sense, of course, last year the question was culture fit. Is he a fit for LSU? Of course, the family clip that went viral, everybody's asking, is he a fit at LSU? Can he win there? Now the question is, how does it feel to be the favorite in the SEC West? Can you get your team to the next level? Can you win the SEC title? Can you get to the college football playoff? So I thought Brian Kelly, nothing severe jumped out to me other than he's extremely confident in his football team, and I think he's got a damn good reason to be so. They've got a hell of a team. Dudes all over the place. Jimbo Fisher, it's funny. By not trying to create headlines, I think Jimbo Fisher did just that when he was asked about Bobby Petrino and the play calling duties. And he could have just said something, hey, we hired Bobby Petrino. He's one of the best at what he does. He's going to help our offense tremendously. I'm going to let him take the reins. And that's it. We're looking forward to having a much improved offense this year. But instead, he gave a really complex, confusing type of answer with, well, we hired Bobby. He's a great coach. I'm not going to give away all the secrets. We'll do this. We'll do that. Hopefully he'll call plays in this. We'll go gate a game. And it's almost like he created more narratives and more question marks than there already were. And so it makes you think to yourself, there's that ego. There's that Jimbo Fisher ego that everybody wondered, could he remove? And then Eli Drinkwitz. Listen, I know Gamecock fans hate Eli Drinkwitz. I get it. I get it totally. Eli Drinkwitz actually, honestly, in his opening statement came off to me as somewhat funny. I know Gamecock fans are going to hate to hear me say that, but I did appreciate the little quip he had when he said, I'm going to try to not become a trending topic on Twitter. I can appreciate the self-awareness. Outside of that, of course, he talking about the quarterback battle in Columbia, Missouri, of course. I thought that was really interesting. Talking about, Brady Cook, he's going to have a tough time holding off the other two players, Sam Horn, and the Miami transfer whose name, for whatever reason, seems to slip my mind. I thought that was interesting. Is he just creating competition? Is there really a quarterback competition? Or does Brady Cook really need to be looking over his shoulder? And so that was the coaches, guys, the players. It's players' quotes are so funny. They're so interesting because you have to remember they're kids. Some of these guys, they don't think about how something's going to sound or how it's going to be perceived when it's tweeted, when they say it, whatever. So you've got guys, because I don't think anybody really says anything with malicious intent necessarily, or the intent to start or stir things up or whatever, because you got the Texas A&M guy saying that, had we won all the one-possession games we had, we'd have been a 10-win football team. And it's like, bro, if your aunt had balls, she'd be your uncle. Like, what difference does it make? Anaya Smith talking about Jimbo Fisher and how that, what Bobby Petrino was meant adding him to the staff. I thought that was really interesting. But in regards to the day as a whole, guys, and of course, we'll be dropping those mini vlogs every single morning, by the way, so you guys will be able to know exactly what went down the day that was for yours truly. Being in that building with, dare I say, the who's who of college football. I mean, guys, everybody almost that you can think of in college football Twitter is at SEC Media Days. They were at the event today, and they'll be there all week, most likely. And shaking hands and conversating with so many folks that I've been fortunate enough to have on the show, on the airwaves. People like, let's see if I can recall them all, Braden Gall of Fringe Element 440 Sports, Athlon Sports. My good friend Brad Crawford of 24/7 Sports. The guys over at Southeastern 14, who I'm actually going to go on their show, I believe, later this week. Michael Bratton, a.k.a. SEC Mike and Cousin Shane. We did a spot today that I believe will drop in the next 24 hours on their YouTube page. My guy Billy Derrick over at VandySports.com. Great to see Billy and congratulate him on his accomplishments. My guy J.D. Piquel of On3 Sports. Jake Crane of Crane & Company. Bryce Kuhn that covers LSU for 24/7 Sports, who we just went on his show a couple of weeks ago. Who else? John Neighbors over at Locked On Arkansas, the Locked On Hogs podcast, where we had him on for the SEC team previews. Got to meet Brandon Marcello today of 24/7 Sports. Got to meet a guy, Ty Richardson, who is a producer over at ESPN Arkansas. And I'm trying to make sure I don't leave anyone off. Just so many talented creators, guys, in the space. So many. What is minty? So many talented creators in the space. Having the opportunity to, again, meet these people in person, shake their hand, have conversation, and talk to them as not just a colleague, but as a friend as well. Just a blessing beyond measure. I mean, and that's, guys, what makes this event special and what I know will make it special all week long. Talking with the coaches is great. Asking a question is cool. Getting on TV, that's cool, and that's great to grow the brand, the personal brand, what have you. But it's about the people you interact with. It's about the relationships you create, and the fact that we're able to, in an event like this, continue to spread the brand of TSUS, spread my personal brand and do so much great work with, again, so many talented creators, so many influential college football personalities all under one roof. And, it's just such a cool thing to be there. I think that is, I told you guys yesterday and 2 days ago, and I've said many times, like, the SEC Media Days credentials or being at this event, I don't need that to validate what we're doing for obvious reasons. I don't need that to validate it. And it's not about a sense of validation, but it's a sense of being amongst the top of the top in this space. And again, not just being there and saying, oh, look, that guy. Like, being there and being like, we belong. This is where I belong. This is where TSUS belongs. This is where Chris Phillips belongs. We belong here. I mean, I was asked by Mark Ryan, were you starstruck by anybody? No. Number one, because I don't get starstruck. I think the only person that would leave me starstruck is Michael Jordan and maybe Chipper Jones, because he was like a childhood hero. But I didn't get starstruck today because we belong there. Like we belong. These are our peers. These are our colleagues, not anything like they're above us necessarily. So, but again, the entire day was incredible, guys. It was electric. Got to talk again with SEC Mike and Cousin Shane on that SEC podcast. Got a lot of shows lined up. We're going to go on Crane and Company at some point this week. We're going to talk with Billy Derrick of Vandy Sports some point this week. Southeastern 14 some point this week. Going to be jumping on a bunch of shows. Also, guys, we scheduled radio for Friday for, what is the station again? Let me see. Let's see. What is the radio station? What is the radio station here? Give me 1 second. Travis Hancock over at WFNZ in Charlotte, the Mac and Bone Show. So we're going to go back on there. Of course, we did that a little bit over a month ago now. We're going to go on there Friday morning at 9:25 a.m. to talk SEC Media Days. We'll be talking with Mark Rogers Thursday afternoon to talk SEC Media Days. We're going to talk with Braden Gall on Thursday to talk SEC Media Days, South Carolina perspective. It's just blessings on blessings. And I am grateful and honored to know these people, interact with these people, work with these people, create value with these people. It's an honor, man. It's an honor. I think my guy Blake Ruffino is tuned in, by the way. Yeah, Ty Richardson. We were actually talking about you tonight, Blake, because he mentioned, he was like, you're the Spurs Up Show, right? Yeah, I saw you. I knew I recognized your face. I saw you on Blake Ruffino's show. See, that's what I'm saying, man. It's really cool. Another one, Connor O'Gara, my guy Connor O'Gara, hung out with him at dinner, by the way, at the SEC media event that took place at the Nashville Predators Stadium tonight, which was really, really cool. Really cool. In the Lexus Lounge, the spread's incredible. They got all the helmets in there, ice sculpture of SEC Media Days. I mean, SEC Media Days, it's to the nines, bro. It's to the nines. I mean, I had high expectations, but even I wondered, like, will it meet the hype? You hear so much about it. Like, will it actually meet the hype? And it has exceeded it, guys. It has exceeded it. I mean, the host, Grand Hyatt in Nashville, is beautiful. Again, man, just getting to kind of wander around and, just bump into whoever, Hendon Hooker was there this morning, right? He's floating around doing different stuff. Again, seeing everybody set up, doing their thing. Saw Cole Kubelik, saw Josh Pate, Billy Lucci at Texags. I mean, just the who's who, man, of college football, really, truly. It was a blast. I mean, I'm trying to find the words, man. And I'll tell you this too, by the way. Again, we'll have the full video in the morning, the mini vlog, if you will, early morning tomorrow, by the way, or today, if you're hearing this via podcast, with everything getting going at 9 a.m., or really 8:15 a.m. But Clark Lee will start the day off, I think, at 9:15 a.m. Central Time. So it's going to be an early one tomorrow morning, or today, again, when you're hearing this. But going to be a lot of fun for sure, man. I will tell you this, the Nashville Predators Bridgestone Arena that is right by Broadway. And guys, I just kind of walked through, wanted to get a glimpse of it, and they're actually having festivities on Broadway tomorrow night, Tuesday night, having a concert. SEC Nation's going to be out there. Yours truly going to step out there, of course, and take it all in. Dude, Broadway, and I've never been to Nashville, right? And I told one of the guys this. I said, man, Broadway is a place you could go down there and get lost. I mean, you could go down there and get lost in a party, man. You could go down there and get lost in a party. I mean, it was 5 o'clock on a Monday, and Broadway was going crazy, man. It was going crazy. So, Nashville's a cool place, man. The city's incredible. The city's popping, full of energy. And SEC Media Days for sure, man, was the same way. Like I said, it's an electric factor. I mean, the energy in that building, the excitement, everybody's so ready for kickoff. And, again, it's so funny talking to people that, in the building, because you can just tell we all do this and we're all passionate about it and all love it. It's funny I say we because I'm lumping myself in there with the media boys, if you will. But it's cool, too, to interact with folks that are on, kind of the new age side of media, the podcast side, and just an awesome experience, man. An awesome first day, and, I know it'll only continue. So looking forward to the rest of the week. Day one was a massive, massive success. Cannot wait for what the rest of the week has in store, truly, guys. It was absolutely incredible. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the side, hey, we're talking our 2023 opponent preview series officially continues. We're talking the Gamecocks week 2 opponent, the Furman Paladins. On tonight's show, and guys, we got the play-by-play voice of the Furman Paladins, Dan Scott. Really great conversation. Stay tuned for that, guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much again. We're going to jump into a quick break. On the side, we'll keep the conversation rolling here on this Monday night. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back. Not exactly sure what just happened with the countdown video, but either way, all good. We're back from our break. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in here on this Monday night. As our 2023 opponent preview series continues, we talk the Gamecocks week 2 opponent, an in-state matchup against the Furman Paladins of the FCS, and who better us get down. Then the voice of the Furman Paladins, the play-by-play man, Dan Scott. He joins the show to talk all things Furman football. Dan, appreciate you taking the time, man. It is a pleasure to have you on.
Well, Chris, thank you for asking me. Looking forward to talking some Furman football with you.
Absolutely, Dan. So as we dive into it, before we look at this year's team, let's look back at last year because it was a historic year for the Furman football program. 10-3 overall record, 7-1 in the SoCon. And most importantly, Furman won their first FCS playoff game since 2017. Just talk about the 2022 season it was and all the great accomplishments for the Paladins a season ago.
You know, it was a fun season. And as the story unfolded as the year went on, there were a couple of storylines that began to emerge. One, and I don't think this is any secret with any football team, high school, college, or professional, it starts with quarterback play. And what Tyler Huff brought to our offense is something we have not had at the quarterback position, maybe going back as far as Billy Napier, quite honestly. His ability to throw the football, his ability to run the football, his decision making, knowing when to run, when, and in fact, sometimes they had to kind of reel him in because he as Tommy Spangler, who joined our staff last year as a defensive coach, was his former head coach at Presbyterian College. I asked Tommy, I said, what do I need to know about him? He said, he's a quarterback with a linebacker's mentality. and they had to reel in his running a little bit because he would just as soon try to run over somebody as he would try to run around them. But as the season went on and he got more comfortable in Justin Roper, our new offensive coordinator's offense, it really highlighted what had been missing from Furman's offense. And it's just that quality level of quarterback play. So you put that together with the best offensive line that we've had probably since I've been there. And this fall, I'll be going into my 13th season. You put that together with a dominant stable of running backs, with a talented wide receiver core, and with an All-American tight end, and you had an offense that was awfully fun to watch. The other side, the other storyline that developed was how the defensive front began to emerge and exert itself as the year went on, up to and including blocking 10 kicks over the course of the season. And it became one of those things where you kept telling yourself, certainly they can't do it again. And they did. And then they would do it again and again. And you know this as well as anybody. When you can rush the passer with your front four, it makes it easier to play pass defense in the secondary. And despite a couple of injuries, they were able to get consistent pressure up front. And it just became a cohesive thing on both sides of the football that built momentum. And quite honestly, we all walked away from that second playoff game when we lost by 3 to Incarnate Word. Everybody thought that we should have won that game. I mean, we had a game-tying field goal attempt in our back pocket, and Tyler made one of his rare bad decisions, throwing deep into double coverage at the end of the game, trying to force the ball into Ryan Miller, and it was intercepted. And then you see what Incarnate Word did to Sacramento State, and then you get to the semifinals that they went to against North Dakota State. This is a team that's got a chance to be special this year, and a lot of it's coming off of that momentum, the depth that's coming back. I think it's like 38 of the top 44 in the 2 deep are back for this team. It's you never know what's going to happen as a year unfolds, but on paper, this is going to be an awfully good football team again.
Dan, let's talk a little bit about Clay Hendricks, the head coach of the Paladins, going in his 7th season. Just talk about the job he's done with Furman football to this point and how the fan base of Furman football feels about what he's done to this point.
Clay is a joy. I mean, he really is. He is a Furman guy. He played here, graduated here, coached here before he went off to the Air Force Academy for here. He's just a guy who believes that you can win at Furman, and the high academic standards other people look at as a detriment. He embraces it. He knows they have to go after a certain kind of kid. They have done a fantastic job of identifying those type of players. They've expanded their recruiting footprint. We're starting to get now starting to get players regularly out of Texas, which prior to him getting here, I don't think we had ever done. And he and his staff are just great at identifying the type of player it takes to be successful at Furman, and then coaching them up. It's a development program. We do have some transfers, but that's another story we can get into, I guess. But by and large, you come here as a freshman, 90% of the freshmen are going to redshirt and expect to be contributors over the course of a 5-year career. That is unique in college athletics today. It's unique even at the FCS level. It's unique in the Southern Conference. But he's put the pieces of the puzzle together. They've upgraded the game day experience at Furman. He's been a big part of that. I just can't tell you how great he's been to work with.
Now, Dan, let's move into the 2023 outlook for this Furman Paladins football team. As you mentioned, it could be a special year, and it starts on the offensive side with your quarterback, Tyler Huff, as you mentioned, coming back 2,200 passing yards a season ago and 15 passing touchdowns to go along with 694 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. Like you mentioned, that linebacker at quarterback mentality. You do lose your top tight end, Ryan Miller, to the NFL, but you bring back your top 3 pass catchers in Joshua Harris, Kendall Dean, and Wayne Anderson. Dominic Roberto, the leader in the running game, 1,120 yards a season ago, 11 touchdowns. And like you mentioned, the offensive line, 3 of 5 return, led by All-American candidate Pearson Toomey. So it sounds like to me, Dan, that Furman should be explosive on the offensive side yet again.
Again, on paper, they absolutely should. And I think the other advantage we have is that everybody now is going into their second year in Justin Roper's offensive system, which I loved watching it, up close and personal last year for the first time. The way he spreads the ball around, the way he maximizes getting the ball into the hands of his playmakers. He's not afraid to take shots down the field. It's a fun offense to watch. The thing about the offensive line a year ago was we had a couple of season-ending injuries to guys who were expected to be primary backups in fall camp. So that front 5 last year, if you look at the snap percentage, played, 90-95% of the snaps over the course of the year. And so you're just blessed that you didn't get somebody hurt. We would have had 4 coming back, but Evan Jumper transferred to Coastal Carolina for his graduate season because Furman didn't have a graduate program that fit what he wanted to do. But with Jake Johanning, Wyatt Hughes, and as you mentioned, Pearson Toomey coming back to anchor that, all redshirt seniors. And then the 2 guys who were hurt last year, Garrett Volmer, who just had a leg that got torn up in practice. He's a 6'5", 298-pounder transferred in out of Old Dominion. And then a young man, I know they're really high on, Luke Pettit, who had a knee injury last year in camp. Those 2 guys are going to provide some depth. Track to be one edition, literally and figuratively, was Fred Norman, the kid who came in from East Tennessee State, 6'7", 340-pound tackle, to play his graduate season here. So I think the offensive line is going to be fine, and it's going to have more depth, barring injuries. But you mentioned Dominic Roberto, the stable of running backs behind him, the depth there is just ridiculous. The wide receiver, ridiculous. If if everything unfolds the way that it should in year 2 in this system, it's going to be a fun offense. Yeah, you've got to replace Ryan Miller's production, but I have full confidence as Justin Roper will be able to do that.
Now, switching sides of the football, Dan, you look at the defense, and experience is what really jumps out to me. You return 10 starters, but you return your top 11 tacklers from 2022, the squad that ran just 20.2 points per game. You led the FCS in turnovers gained a season ago with 29. And again, 10 starters from that group are back, led by Braden Gilby, Bryce McCormick at the linebacker position, Matt Shavoka, Jack Barton, and Luke Clark all return up front. And then you look in the back end, all SoCon cornerback Travis Blackshear returns, Hugh Ryan and Cam Brinson man the safety spots. The big question for Furman going into this year, Dan, is there's number 16 against the run last year. They were number 115 in the country against the pass a season ago. So getting the secondary shored up is certainly something they'll want to focus on, especially when you look at a game like against a South Carolina, which we'll get into in just a second. But talk about this Furman Paladins defense, because again, even with maybe those passing numbers, this was a group that obviously got the job done last year.
Yeah, and I think those numbers are a little deceiving because we play in a conference that has teams that run the option to just about everybody throws it all over the place. I think what you have to look at is that bottom line number, which is points allowed, and look at the point differential over the course of the season. Do they need to shore some things up? Absolutely. But there's an awful lot of talent there. And when you play teams like Samford, who run it at a breakneck pace and they throw it, 75%, 80% of the time, you're going to give up yards. But do you give up points? And I think that's probably the biggest thing that you look at. Hugh Ryan's a third team preseason All-American. Getting Travis Blackshear back for a graduate season, I think, was a little unexpected because he initially went into the transfer portal and decided to come back. There again is a lot of talent there. The depth up front is the thing I think that should frighten people. All those people you mentioned, you got Jeremiah Jackson, who is coming back off of a season-ending injury early in the season last year. That front four for the Paladins, and it, even if you want to go into the linebackers, make it the front seven, it is incredibly deep and incredibly talented. At our level, there are not going to be a lot of teams who can match the depth that we run out there.
Now, moving to special teams, Dan, like you mentioned, something that jumped out when I was looking at this preview, doing some research on the Paladins, led the FCS in blocked kicks with 10 a season ago. And obviously at South Carolina, we love special teams. I mean, you probably see my shirt, Beamer Ball, we talk about it all the time. So I respect it, man. Special teams, obviously a facet of the game that not everybody puts emphasis on. Not everyone talks about. Obviously, Furman was doing something right. Anytime you block 10 kicks in a season, that's certainly the case. Anything jump out to you about Furman's special teams going into this year? Do you expect, could they possibly do it again? Block kicks at that rate? And in the return game, kicking game, punting game, what stands out for Furman going into this year?
Well, I just think the question on everybody's mind is, how could you possibly do that again? And the thing that I keep going back to, it was largely Matt Sachoka and Jack Barton interior kicks. It wasn't any special scheme or anything. It was just, this is what we do, and we're going to keep doing it. Expecting them to block 10 again this year would be, I think, a little unreasonable. But I'll say this: if they did it, it wouldn't surprise me, because you've got the same cast of characters back. You've got great speed in the back end to when it comes to returning kickoffs, and Wayne Anderson Jr. and Kendall Thomas. The punt return team, Clay Hendricks' big thing is not necessarily having somebody back there who's going to turn in the highlight reel punt return. He wants somebody who's going to catch it and secure it, and not be afraid to catch it under pressure, as opposed to letting the ball bounce and roll another 15 or 20 yards, to maximize field position. So special teams wise, they're in good shape. Again, if you look at the roster top to bottom, the depth that is coming back in every phase of the game is just so out of the ordinary for what you normally or 10+ win season. No, you got to go out and earn it. But I think in all three phases of the game, top to bottom. And again, when I got here, there was some pretty good football being played. But I don't think that I can recall in 13 years seeing a team that was on paper as complete as.
And let's switch gears, get into the overall outlook and talk about the South Carolina game, because you've mentioned transfer portal, NIL, and it's so funny. We spend so much time obviously talking Gamecocks and SEC football. Like, those are such top of mind issues because you're dealing with it on a day in, day out basis. The transfer portal, and then of course NIL and recruiting. Is that something at the FCS level? And I mean, to your point, South Carolina's top receiver this year is Juice Wells, who came from James Madison at FCS school. So obviously the transfer portal is affecting these FCS schools, especially, big time school or big SEC cherry picking kind of the top guys and bringing them on their roster. So obviously that's another challenge for FCS coaches. But I'm just curious, again, we talk about these issues every day. Is NIL and transfer portal affecting the FCS level the way it's affecting the FBS level necessarily?
I don't know how much NIL is. I know that, Furman has some NIL stuff. I don't know how big of a deal that is. It is, part of the process, but the transfer portal, it absolutely is affecting the FCS. I mean, you can just look in the Southern Conference and see schools whose rosters just in the last 2 years have had 60-70% turnover. And what you have is have guys who are coming from FBS schools down to play at the FCS level. If they're not getting to play in time they want there, they're coming down and playing at FCS schools. So when you look around our conference, when you look around the FCS landscape, I mean, just look at what North Dakota State has done over the years. They've made a living even before the transfer portal became a thing. They've made a living on getting FBS level transfers to come into their program. And you see how dominant they've been for the last decade. So yeah, it is something that has a wide ranging effect on FCS football. The interesting thing, and I have to be careful when I say this, because when I say it, oftentimes it's taken as a knock on other schools, and I don't mean it that way necessarily. But Furman, from an academic standpoint, considers itself, and I think rightly so, one of the highest academic standard schools in the country. And they do not make exceptions for athletes. They do not make academic exceptions. And up until 2 years ago, Furman did not have a graduate program, which means that we were losing kids who could have played an extra year and were unable to bring in the rare graduate transfer that could finish their career here and have an opportunity to get a graduate degree. 2 years ago, they instituted kind of a hybrid business grad program that has not solved all the problems, but it has helped. But even at that, Clay Hendricks, Bob Ritchie basketball, every coach on campus, there's still a standard that they have to, an academic standard they have to adhere to when they bring somebody onto this campus as a grad student or as a rare undergraduate transfer, which rarely happens. I think we have 2 or 3 on the football team. But you look at the makeup of this roster, 97 roster recruited, redshirted, developed. That is unusual In our conference, it's unusual at the FCS level because the transfer portal, like it has and those who are not shy about using it. And what we're days, I think we have 13 commitments already for this next signing class that's coming up, and in a time frame where normally we only have maybe 4 or 5. And he was telling me what he has seen gotten burned by coaches going into the transfer portal, and they're wanting to make sure now that they get a spot, a place that they like and they know that they can compete before those scholarship offers are not because of the transfer portal. So in a kind of bizarre way, it's almost benefited because with Clay's model of recruiting, developing, it's opening doors for those type of players. Some of the opportunities they may have are not available now because of all across football and transfer portal.
Look back on the field in this 2023 Paladins team, like you mentioned, experience is really what jumps out to you. 18 starters back, 8 on off. This earlier, 38 of 44 players from the 2 deep are back. I mean, that's unheard of, like you mentioned. This is a preseason top 10 FCS team, so Furman obviously is expected to compete and be a factor in the playoff once again. And as we look at the Paladins 2023 schedule, open up with Tennessee Tech on Thursday, August the 31st, then that road trip to South Carolina, which we'll get into in a sec. Then first you have your bye week. You've got the Citadel at Samford, at Western Carolina, East Tennessee State, at Chattanooga, VMI, and then you close out the season at Wofford in Spartanburg. Just talk a little bit, Dan, about that 2023 schedule and how you think it shakes out for the Furman and Paladins.
The first thing that jumps out is Clay is not one who likes to play 2 FBS schools in the same season, and South Carolina yet, but they're going to have, I don't know, 10, 12 more scholarship players than Furman does when we go there to play. And this was a game that was supposed to be played a few years back and had to be moved for one reason or another. So that's going to be a challenge. The back games was in Western Carolina, who run similar offenses and want to go at that breakneck speed and throw it all over the place. The games that we've had with them in the past couple of years have been track meets. And you know, the Citadel is going to be interesting, you know, for the old school people. That's Furman's biggest rival. And they have a new coach, a new staff, and you know, you see them out and all this other stuff. So it's a fun football game every year. The bottom line is you're in a situation where you control your own. At least one more, and there was an argument for 2 more. That this is a good FCS football league. So you take nothing for granted. You take absolutely nothing for granted. You know, Paladins once game last year that in previous years the ball bounced the other way or they didn't make a play.
versus 9-game conference schedule. And a lot of fans, you'll hear them say, get rid of the quote unquote cupcake games. When they say that, they're talking about games like this. They're talking about the SEC versus FCS matchups, but there's another side to it, right? Which is the side of a Furman, the side of the Citadel, the side of Wofford, whoever it is, that school in particular. What does a game like this mean to a school like Furman? And again, I want to be careful with the way I'm phrasing it, because this is not a typical FCS matchup where it's like you can expect Carolina will roll their helmets out there, win 49-0. Just ask Clemson a season ago, in which I know that you guys lost the Tigers 35-12, but that was a game Furman outgained Clemson. I mean, they gave them all they wanted and more. So talk about, though, the significance of a game like this, because we hear it every day from the the SEC perspective and those fan bases. From the Furman perspective, from the FCS perspective, why are these games important? And obviously the in-state factor of it as well.
Well, there are a couple of things. Number one, a lot of these kids had dreams of playing at a big level, at the FBS level. So it's an opportunity for them to play on that stage. But, let's be honest. There's the business aspect of it. And when you play as Furman, when you play South Carolina, when you play a Clemson, and I don't know what the payout in the contract is, but I'm going to assume it's probably somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000 or $650,000, somewhere in that window. For our athletic department, that's huge, because we don't have the massive television contracts. We don't have 60, 70, 80,000 people in the stands buying tickets and all of that revenue. We average probably about 10,000 fans a game, and that's up over the last couple of years. So the financial impact cannot be ignored. It cannot be understated. And I think that's one of the conversations that athletic directors and football coaches at the FCS level are having now. It is what happens if the FBS schools decide they're not going to play these games anymore, especially the Power 5 conferences. What happens if the SEC decides to go to that 9-game conference schedule? Are they going to get rid of a group of 5 game, or are they going to get rid of the FCS game? How are they going to go about that? Nobody knows the answer to that right now, but it's a discussion that's happening, because at our level, those games, as fun as they are, and as much as we love going to the big stadiums, and, I've been able, in the time that I've been here, to broadcast from South Carolina twice, from Clemson 3 times, from Michigan State, from LSU, from Florida, Virginia Tech a couple of times. It's great going into those atmospheres, and the kids want to go in and compete. Bottom line is the bottom line, that our athletic department, just like every FCS athletic department, needs that paycheck. And so the conversations are, what happens if that paycheck goes away? How do you recover? So that's why, above and beyond anything else, these games are important for schools like Furman or any other FCS school. It's such a big boost to the athletic department's budget. The bottom line, if you take $500,000 out of South Carolina's budget, it's not going to mean very much, quite honestly. You take $500,000 out of Furman's budget, and now, you've got people who may have to worry about being laid off. I mean, it's that, and maybe that's a little bit of hyperbole, but I don't think it's much.
Now, Dan, as we look at this, again, South Carolina game specifically, I ask you this question: in Furman, a top 10 team in the FCS level, bringing back all the experience they do. South Carolina, of course, opens up with UNC. This is a week 2 matchup, night game at Williams-Brice Stadium. I'm sure you've experienced that before. It'll be a raucous environment, of course, the home opener for South Carolina. And I have picked this as a win for the Gamecocks, but I've picked it much closer, I think, than folks would expect me to or liked me to. I look at Furman again. All of South Carolina fans are expecting this as a W, but I ask you this question because after last year, I look at the fits that Furman gave Clemson. And I'll ask you, do you believe Furman can actually compete and potentially give South Carolina a game, maybe even into the fourth quarter, maybe pull the upset? Is it possible that Furman could do that?
Well, I think anything is possible. The question is it likely? And probably not, if I'm being honest. But, it's a funny game, and that's a funny shaped ball. And the thing that Furman has going for it, and we saw it against Clemson last year, even though we didn't realize perhaps how deep the team was and was going to be. You mentioned was 35-12 was the final. Well, Clemson had its first team defense on the field in the fourth quarter in a goal line stand to try to keep us out of the end zone. And that's a game where we turned it over once, and then we missed a couple opportunities offensively that if those two things happen, suddenly you're talking about a one-score game and Furman has the ball in the fourth quarter. Same type of thing would have to happen at South Carolina. Normally what you see in a FBS FCS matchup is as the game goes on, not only does the talent level take over, but the depth of the FBS team takes over. And I'm sure South Carolina is a deeper, more talented football game. I don't think there's a football team. I don't think there's a question about that. But what I don't think you're going to see is a tremendous drop-off when we do play our second string guys because of that 38 of 44 and the two deep coming back and that kind of depth. Furman will have to take care of the football. South Carolina will have to make some mistakes. And then what you hope for is that you're in that one-score game late in the football game, and all of the pressure suddenly is on South Carolina and their home opener in their home environment and all of that stuff. Gamecocks are going to be heavily favored. They should be heavily favored and will more than likely win the game. But I will be shocked if Furman does not give South Carolina some fits at certain parts of that football game.
Can't wait to see it, man. Week 2 of the college football season. Gamecocks and Paladins under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium. Dan Scott, the play-by-play voice, the Furman Paladins, and the Greenville Drive, by the way, does a fantastic job. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time, my friend. Let's definitely do it again soon.
Chris, appreciate it.
Okay, that was Dan Scott, voice of the Furman Paladins. Again, appreciate him taking the time, guys. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Again, I do apologize for the technical issues. The Wi-Fi in the Airbnb is not the greatest. So, again, thank you all for being patient. Thank you all for rolling with the punches, guys. We're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, though, we're going to get my good friend J.C. Shurburtt of the Big Spur. We got a lot to get into with JC. That's coming up on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, July the 17th, 2023. Like I mentioned, apologies for the technical issues, technical difficulties that we are obviously having on this Monday night. We will try to make the adjustments moving forward. What this will probably mean, guys, is probably no Q&A power hour unless we get to after JC. I'm really just worried about getting JC Shurburtt in here, and then we'll figure it out from there. Just fingers crossed that the Wi-Fi will be good enough to host JC Shurburtt. So we will figure it out after that. Yeah. Anyways, guys. Looking forward to tomorrow. Again, bright and early. Clark Lee will take the podium at 9:15 a.m. My guy Dalton says, nobody said covering SEC media days was going to be easy, although it probably would have been easier if you could have gotten a table on the floor or something. Not sure how easy that is to do, though. I will tell you this, Dalton. I'm actually glad I didn't get a table this year. Just because, I would have gladly taken one. Don't get me wrong. But just because, this is my first one. So getting to kind of see the lay of the land and how things work and what these other entities are doing. I'm glad I get to do that. I'm really glad I get to do that and kind of sit back and just see what's going on. So, it's a learning experience, and I'm fine with how we have the setup now. I have no issues with that, but certainly excited for next year. Hopefully, by the way, Dallas. I didn't mention that at the top of the show. SEC Media Days 2024 in Dallas, Texas. Really excited for that. Yeah, guys, we probably honestly will not rock in the Q&A power hour just because it is super late on the East Coast, 11:13 p.m. For you guys, 10:13 here Central Time in Nashville. We are up late, Rebecca, for sure. Again, JC Shurburtt, though, is going to join us in the next 2 minutes or so. Gamecocks miss on another recruit today as Malcolm Ziegler chooses North Carolina. And I don't care who you are, what color, what shade of glasses, if they are garnet, I don't care how diehard of a Gamecock you are. Gamecock Nation is beginning to grow restless. That is so evident based off of social media. If you have two eyes and a brain, you can see that. And so I wonder what JC, I feel like we've already asked JC Shurburtt about the concerns with recruiting. Here's why it's not time to hit the panic button. But I don't know, man. I feel like people are growing a little restless. I don't know if there's worry necessarily, but there is restlessness for sure. There is restlessness for sure. I mean, there's just no question. There's no question. All right, so we got JC Shurburtt on the way. Again, guys, hopefully, just fingers crossed that the Wi-Fi is going to cooperate. Fingers crossed. I don't know if it's going to. We shall see. I'm hoping it does. And if it doesn't, we'll just figure it out as we go. I don't know. We'll try to figure this thing out as we go. I mean, honestly, guys, I'll tell you this. Honestly, if the Wi-Fi is shoddy this week, we might just record podcast coming home. And I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be okay. Let's see. We're going to go ahead and get him in here. He's waiting behind the scenes. And again, guys, he joins us every single week, every Tuesday. Truly grateful for him, rolling with the punches, taking time with us late here on this Monday night. JC Shurburtt of the Big Spur. He joins the show. JC, what's going on, my friend? I'm not sure if you can hear or see me, but appreciate you taking the time. What's going on? Oh, here we go. All right, we're going to try this. We just connected to the hotspot. JC Shurburtt, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, man? I think that was my fault. Sometimes when I come on your show, if I have GarageBand open on my Mac, it likes to interfere with your streaming program for some reason. I don't know why.
Well,
So I shut that one out, so I'm good. And then it popped right up, so I'm good.
Okay. Well, I also just switched over to my hotspot, so hopefully, again, I'm playing around with Airbnb Wi-Fi and what have you. So we're just kind of making it work. But as I was saying, thank you so much for being willing to roll with a different time.
Mhm. Oh, well, Chris, you broke up badly there on me, bud. I didn't catch any of that. Shoo.
All right, we're gonna try this one more time. Here we go.
All right, here we
JC,
go.
we got you. Okay, perfect. That was
Gotcha.
my bad. That was my bad. The hotspot was not the solution. Anyways, again, appreciate you tuning in. Again, rolling with the punches, doing a different time. Let's start before we get into all things Gamecocks. Day one, SEC Media Days. Brian Kelly, Jimbo Fisher, Eli Drinkwitz. Your thoughts on what they had to say?
Well, I thought Brian Kelly was, pretty confident guy. Second year dealing with all of us crazy Southerners. I think second year Baton Rouge, he looks a little more comfortable. And he went out there and, they made a statement, Chris. I mean, after they lost their first game and just the overreaction to that loss was horrible. And they rebounded like good teams do, and they won down the stretch. Do I think LSU should be as hyped maybe as some of their better teams like 2011 and 2019? I don't see this team as being as good as those. Is it a team capable of winning the SEC and going to the playoff if things come together? But keep in mind too. I mean, this is a team that lost to A&M by 2 touchdowns at the end of last year. That had a nice offensive game against Georgia in the Georgia Dome, but still got beat by 20. And then had a pretty fortuitous matchup in the bowl against a depleted Purdue team that had lost its coach or was going to lose its coach. One of those. I don't know. I don't remember exactly when Brom left, but so I don't know. I thought he looked good. I think Jimbo obviously was going to be asked about the Bobby Petrino thing, and his answer is the same. And my guess is this: I think if I'm Jimbo Fisher at this point, I'm just going to continue to make it seem like it's an issue. And then I'm going to work extra hard to not make it an issue because, man, Bobby Petrino, say what you want about that guy. He is still one of the best play callers in the game. I watched Missouri State, Arkansas last year. It came on kind of late, I think in the third week of the year. And, Arkansas wasn't ready for them. And he was dialing up ball plays, and he went right up and down the field. On them. They were 17-0 before you could blink, and they've obviously got a lot of talent at Texas A&M. So if I have a storyline that may be the most overblown right now, it's will Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher get along? Now they may not, and I may be wrong, but I think that's kind of an overblown thing. I know Eli's really happy about his defense this year. I kind of agree. They got some good personnel coming back. I think they have a good coordinator now, unlike the Steve Wilkes experiment, which was a horrible failure against everybody but Marcus Satterfield back in 2021. Two NFL guys, right, going at it. So anyway, I think they're good defensively, and if you look at their schedule, that they could start 5-0. Chris, they can start 2-3. I mean, it's one of those things where Missouri's going to kind of hang in the balance. And you talk to some of the media around the league about what they think about Mizzou this year, and it's everything from they're a dark horse second place in the East to they're going to finish below Vanderbilt in last place. So who knows what to make of Eli Drinkwitz and the Tigers, but certainly he's always got he's got a little bit of a personality, so it's sometimes when folks are boring, it's good to kind of shake things up. The main thing I listened to today was Sankey, because I think Greg Sankey's got a lot of good things to say about the game in general, the sport in general. And, big surprise. We arrived back at the same thing with NIL, kind of a known thing with 9-game schedules, with conference expansion, all that good stuff. Really no news there. It's kind of status quo, but it just kind of shows you, Chris, that, some of these issues that we face in the macro sense in college football, that they don't have a lot of good solutions right now. And the longer it goes, and the more teams and programs get in habits of doing their own thing, the tougher it's going to be to get those horses back in the barn, so to speak. So I don't know what's going to happen with all that, but his answers didn't surprise me, but I think they were telling and speak to maybe for the first time in our lifetime since following the sport. There's just no good answers for a lot of the issues.